As usual, I need just a second. All right. Okay, everyone, welcome. So we are now capturing and live streaming. So welcome to the August meeting of the Grand Strand Astronomers. So just a couple of things before we get started with our discussion. So of course, we didn't have very good luck with weather for our observing session. In fact, we had pretty lousy luck with the rain. Hoping for a better one next time, Saturday, August 27th at Hampton State Historic Site. We did have a really good one in May. We tend to be skipping in June. We tend to be skipping every other month. We had a very good one in April and a really good one in May. We look forward to seeing everybody out there. Again, moon conditions are pretty good that night. It's only like a 0.3% moon. Our next regular meeting will be September 8th. Right now we're doing all virtual meetings. That was kind of we did a poll and everybody said, well, let's just do virtual meetings. So we're going to go ahead and continue doing that. We will have some face-to-face ones. I'll schedule something in the fall, maybe October. We'll do a face-to-face and we'll try to get a really good speaker. And we'll do that at Coastal Carolina University. So I just wanted to bring up that. The only little housekeeping thing, of course, will be that we have we need to do elections. We were actually supposed to do them last month, but I simply forgot. We'll go ahead and open up. I will open up nominations starting this meeting. We'll do some online ones, and then we'll just vote next meeting, and we'll set up ways for people to vote offline. So we'll just go ahead and do that and get that squared away. So other than that, that's all the business that we had. We should have renewed everybody for the Astronomical League, so you should still continue getting your Reflector magazines. On top of that, what we started talking about before we went live is planetary imaging. We're coming into a really nice planetary season. So we'll probably have a couple discussions about this in the ensuing months, because not only right now, you now have some evening planets. You don't have to wait till 4 o'clock in the morning to take pictures of planets. But we're coming up in the latter part of the year with Mars, with another close Mars pass. So it'll be a good time to get some good Mars imaging. So time to break out, those planetary cameras or webcams and the higher focal length telescopes. Chris, we were talking a little bit about astrosurface, and you had posted some really excellent pictures on Facebook. And but you were indicating you were seeing a lot of noise in the processing step.
Yeah, I think further to the discussion that we had, I don't know whether it was because I was taking very short exposures of 90 seconds or so, not getting enough data in there. I did try to increase the number of frames, but obviously you're getting a lower quality on it. So I think what I'll try next time around is either to take a 3-minute exposure and a 90-second and just compare the planet, because I was trying to get short exposures because the moon's rotating around the planet and it becomes more visible the longer the exposure. But there was a lot of noise on there that I was trying to get rid of, and I can't bring it up on the laptop here, but I was trying to get astrosurface to using wavelets and the deconvolution. The noise was getting worse the further I process it, which is normal. I just didn't expect it to happen as soon. However, said that, the images are way better than I got last year, and I think I've got an autofocuser for the Celestron, the C9.25, and the autofocus has made a huge difference.
So did you get an actual autofocuser and just instead of electronic one?
It's the electronic one.
Okay, but I mean,
I am manually stepping it, obviously through the computer, but it's heaps better than trying to do it manually.
So is that the one made by Celestron?
Yeah.
Coincidentally, I just have one sitting right here that I just came in.
Yeah.
Somebody had an overstock sale and I went ahead and bought it because I've been trying to focus by hand.
Yeah.
And there's when I use a Barlow. I know you said you use a Barlow, which most people do. So and I use a 2.5 Barlow, and I think it's actually like an image mate. But when I'm trying to focus, there's so much jitter. It's very difficult to see
Yeah.
when I do it by hand, even if I'm really careful.
The way that the autofocuser works in terms of managing the backlash on it, it steps way forwards and then comes back. So it works in the reverse direction with the mirror. So what it does, instead of if you try and go back or forward a little bit, it actually moves it way out and then brings it back. And I find it's a great help. So if you use, is it CPWI? Let's check here. Yeah, CPWI on your computer. So what I do is I connect to the C9.25 wirelessly, and then I use that to do the alignment. I get about four to 6 stars on there, and it gets really good alignment actually. And then use the same program to control the mount as well, to step it and to keep the planet in the middle of the screen. And then you also use CPWI to manage the autofocuser as well. It works really well.
Yeah, sorry, I was just backing away for a second to and it looks like kind of a weird effect when you back away with these backgrounds. But what I was going to do is bring out, just so everybody knows what we're talking about, just because I so happen to have one that they had an overstock sale. One of the vendors I deal with had an overstock sale, and I've always been meaning to buy one, but I never did, and can't resist a good sale. But what Chris is talking about looks like, well, if you could, looks like this, and it attaches to your Celestron. And other vendors make, ZWO makes one as well, and it connects right in, and you can control it from your hand controller. So, and it actually does the focusing for you. You can tell mine's still in the bag, so I haven't hooked it up yet, but that's one of the things here. Hopefully I'll be testing out when we get out there. I've got a 3D print a part for my telescope though, because it's an older one. So I need a little adapter.
Have you got access to a 3D printer?
I think I've got one at work, but I don't know they're doing that library construction. I'll have to see if it's still available.
If you email me the STL files, I can print it for you.
Oh, I appreciate that, because it's a pretty simple part, but of course I'll pay you back for any material costs or anything.
It's cheap.
Yeah, it's just like a little disc that goes over it. I was trying to look for some notes. Excuse me, you can tell I'm highly prepared tonight. Regarding astrosurface that got from a friend of mine who's very good at this, to see if he had any notes on the settings. So one thing I would say, with the frames that you're using, again, I'm just kind of going off my notes, right? How many frames are you actually end up stacking?
Okay, so it depends on the quality of the images. So if you're having reasonably poor seeing, I tend to use a much smaller amount. So I'll go for probably 2 to 3% of the images.
That's about right.
And you can see it on the graph. So if you see the graphs really flat, then you can take a huge number. I've taken 2,000 or 3,000 and stacked them together before. But if you can see quite a slope on there, then I reduce it. And obviously you end up suffering with a noisier image, which I usually use something like Neat Image to sort it out.
What alignment type are you using?
Let me just open up one of my
like
images.
When you do the stacking method, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to open up one of the images. Give me a few seconds and I'll tell you what I'm doing.
So for those of you that, just to make sure everybody can follow along, there's a program called Astrosurface. It's free, and it's actually an excellent program to take a video. If you have a video, you take them with one of the webcams, of a bunch of short exposures. This is the so-called lucky imaging, because you're taking a bunch of short exposures and then you're looking for the really good ones, right? The moments when seeing is really calm and it looks really great. It allows you to grade the images and then pick like the best small percentage. Chris is saying he's using 2 or 3%, which is probably good given he's got 90 seconds. That's actually a smart thing to do. And then you can give it to this program, Astrosurface, which will again help you grade it. And then it will stack and align the images together. And it's surprising because when you, and I don't know if you've got it up, Chris, or not, but
Yeah, I have.
when you first look at the raw video, you'd be surprised. A lot of people are tempted to throw it away because it looks quite fuzzy, actually, fuzzy, and it may not look that bright. So when you stack it and apply a little processing to it, it's amazing how good the images really come out. So, and you can do this with virtually any type of telescope with even a low cost camera. It just needs to take video. And you don't even need to have a tracking mount. You can actually track by hand. I know people that track by hand. Astrosurface will account for the fact that the image is moving around. So you can actually do quite a bit without spending a lot of money for this type of imaging, right? Planetary imaging. You can also do the moon as well, and you've probably seen some of Chris's excellent images of the moon, as well. So kind of gives you something to do on when you have one of those really clear nights, but there's almost a full moon. You can take a picture of something, or there's a bright moon. You can take a picture of something on the moon. Unlike most other imaging, generally, you want a higher, because your targets are pretty small, like your planets or maybe a particular crater on the moon. You generally want a pretty high focal length. So most people to put some kind of Barlow or image mate type glass in there to like crank up the focal length of their telescope anywhere from 2 and 3 times. I mean, because for planetary imaging at f20 or f30 is quite common. So
what I'm going to do, I'll log in with my other computer and open up Astrosurface for that.
all right.
So I was using stacking method with sigma clipping.
Yeah, that's the best one. So, huh. Let's see if I can. We have Chris Desktop coming in.
All right, share screen.
There we go.
All right. So,
Yeah, so let me just point out, Chris, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is actually turned out to be a really great image that Chris posted, right? But you see the raw image here. A lot of times you get really discouraged when you first look at them, because it's like, oh, this image isn't very good. What happened? This actually this looks like it could be a really good image, right? So this is again the raw video footage. So sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just kind of trying
that's
to
right.
weave a narrative for the folks kind of following along if they aren't familiar with planetary imaging.
No worries. So what we'd normally do here is register it first. And then you've got the option, say, for instance, if you're looking at the moon, you'd use this one here, surface detection. But given that we've got a planet, detects the planet, double click on it, brings it up in green. and then click analyze. And it goes through 2 rounds of analysis. So first thing it does, it sharpens a few images up and just shows you more or less what it's going to look like. You can see the yellow bar here. Okay, so you can see there already, it's much improved on what we had.
Right. You can see that, for example, I'll just point out, you can see the great red spot is in a really nice position. That's kind of lower left-ish, maybe center. And then you can also see it looks like you got a shadow of one of the moons on.
That's actually the moon itself. It's
Oh, that's
Ganymede.
actually the moon itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's Io.
Okay.
Now the next one where you tell it to actually analyze all the images is 7,000 of them, so it's going to take a little while, so we might just want to carry on talking through it while it
Okay.
goes through.
Right. So now it's actually going in. It used to be you had to go kind of a lot of the old software used to just make an estimate of how good they were and just kind of give you a whole range, and you kind of had to find out, go kind of plow through and figure out where the cutoff point was. The good news is that the algorithms are a lot better now, and they actually let you, they actually go and they'll actually rank how sharp the image is. And again, what you're looking for is the moments of really good seeing, right? So when the seeing kind of comes and goes, but there are moments when it's actually crystal clear. And you can see this in the eyepiece when you're looking at it. If you kind of stare at a bright object, whether it's the moon or even one of the planets, sometimes on some days you can kind of see it get fuzzy, and all of a sudden, just for a second, or like a second, or maybe a second and a half, all of a sudden the image will be really super clear, right? And you can see detail, and then all of a sudden it'll go away. And you can see that on any given night. So what you're trying to, this is why it's called lucky imaging. So by taking thousands of frames, you're looking for a small percentage, couple percent of those frames that are going to look really good. And so those are the ones that you're going to want to pull out. So it's trying to analyze right now. And again, the software is great, and it's free. It doesn't cost anything. You can download it for free. Chris is actually showing the raw data file now, I think.
That's what I'm trying to do. Okay, that one's not happening. Oh, there we go.
There you go. Yeah, yeah, and you can see this is kind of what it looks like through the eyepiece, right? You can see how things kind of move, and every once in a while you'll see all of a sudden you'll see a bunch of detail, and then it'll go away, right? And you can see some frames are super sharp, and some frames are really blurry, and there's a lot in between, right? So like all of a sudden you'll see details. If you pick a spot, like look at one of the lit portions of the craters, either there's one at the top left or one in the center. Look at the lit portion, the bright portion of the crater, and you'll see that when you watch it, you'll see sometimes it looks really blurry, and other times you'll see you see detail. So and again, this would also generate when you would first look at this, you go, oh, it looks terrible, I did a terrible job imaging, but actually this can be turned into a really nice image. So it's really easy to kind of it's really easy to get discouraged. I remember the first time I did this, it was like I was like, oh, these images are awful, and it produced what I thought a great image. I actually produced a great image the first time I did it. So the other thing, of course, when you're doing this is you want your telescope in collimation. So that is actually important. Oh, this one's probably show it even better. And again, if you look at the bright portion on the left-hand side of that crater, it gives you a really good idea. You see, sometimes you can see really good detail, and other times it like completely fuzzes out. And this is just not uncommon on any given night. This is probably a very good image. You can see the
This one came out really well.
Yeah, you can see the peaks in the center. And again, this came out to be a fantastic image. But if you were just to casually look at this, you might say, oh, wait, it looks really fuzzy. So sorry, I'm just flapping my lips while it processes here.
Yeah, it's almost down there, the yellow bar. Oh, come on.
The funny thing is, this is what I was going to talk to some about tonight. Astrosurface, because of the planetary. Yeah, it looks like.
There we go. So the image we were looking at There you go.
Yeah,
how that
that's
came
great.
out.
So that's how the image comes out. And Chris did a fantastic job with this, and you can see how much detail there really is. Again, you wouldn't look at if you just looked at the raw, you go, oh, well, you'd never get anything like this out of that. But it turns out that that's actually a pretty good capture. This type of imaging really revolutionized doing the planetary imaging. Prior to that, it was quite difficult to get any kind of a decent image.
Right, so that's finished analyzing it. So you've got two options at the moment. What you can do is either tell it as a percentage, how many you'd like it to stack, and that'll tell you how many frames it's got. So there's 255 frames at that quality that it's going to stack, or at that quality and better. Typically, you'd need, I'd say more than about 150 to get a reasonable image. So we could even probably squeeze this to 2%. Let's take a look. There we go, 150, bang on. So if we've got the set sigma clipping, and if we set, what it does, it puts tiles over the planet. So those are the locations it's looking to make sure they're aligned. So if we set this here, you'll see all of these squares come over the planet, and those are like alignment points when it stacks them. So what I'm going to do now is to stack it. I've got the output set as a TIFF file because that gives you 16 bits, which gives you more of a dynamic range. So like if blacks, if we have a dynamic range of 2, white would be say 1 and black would be 0. So because you want the different shades between, if you had, let's say 4 bits of information, you'd be able to get 8 shades of cut or shades itself in there. Because you want a lot of data to work with, you'd increase the number of bits, which gives you a larger granularity to work with. So if we go with TIFF, we get 16 bits that we can work with on that. Which I can tell you that 8 is 256. I can't tell you what 16 bits is. It's a 60,000 or something, or 30,000.
65, 535.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's stacking pretty quickly, but it mentions, as Chris mentioned, probably the biggest mistake, most of the people that write these programs, and they'll talk about how to use them, the stacking programs, the biggest mistake most people make is thinking that more is better. And so they will stack way too many images. Like Chris, how many did you have? How many images did you have totally?
On this one, 150 that we
No, I
do
mean,
now. I haven't actually processed this yet. I have no idea what it's going to look like.
Right. So it's like, so maybe if it's at 2%, so maybe he's got 1,000 frames.
I had the original was, oh, damn, I can't move this. Let me try and close this. Oh, damn. It was about 7,000 frames on it.
All right. So, and he used 150. Most people actually use too many frames. They may think, oh, I got 7,000 frames. It'd be better if I use like 2 or 3 or 4,000. There are a few cases where you may want to use a lot of frames, but most of the time you don't, because you want to pick the best frames. So sorry, I just thought I would point that out in case people thought
That's
you were being too stingy with the frames. That's actually about where most of the experts suggest you start for a lot of this planetary imaging.
I should have, instead of just setting that at 2% of it, should have actually shown you the graph, because it has a curve on there that, if you follow my mouse here, it has a curve that kind of does that. And what you're trying to do is get up at this end a greater number of high quality issues. So up here is high quality and down here is low quality, and you sort of move it along the curve to get the quality that you want, and it tells you how many frames are available. So if it starts off, and some of them come out really well, especially on a good night with clear seeing, the curve sort of very gradual, and then it almost flattens off all the way and then comes down. And if you've got a really flat curve, then you can take a huge number of frames and stack them. And obviously each set of frames decreases or should say improves the signal to noise ratio. But you start getting diminishing returns the more you use. All right, so here's the image that I'm left with at the moment. Do you want to talk through the process, or do you want me to just go through the workflow that I normally use?
Why don't you just go through the workflow? But essentially this is the stacked image. One thing I'll point out is, notice it looks brighter than it did before, right? And that's what kind of throws people off too. A lot of people take their original image too bright. They figure the brighter it is, the better. Actually, you want it just a little bit dim, because not only does that, give you a shorter exposure time, better to get, more detail, because planets are pretty bright, but when you stack it, it's going to become brighter. Sorry, I just thought I'd point that out.
That's right. So talking about the levels and the brightness, that's actually the first thing I do is get it to auto set on the brightness. You can use the region of interest here. So you pull the square over there and it takes a look at all of the data within that square and then it adjusts it accordingly. I often just leave it as auto. If I just pop it here, there we go, auto. So you can start seeing more detail already. You can start seeing the turbulence in the clouds there behind the red spot. That's typically the first thing that I do. And then if you notice the background here is brightened up. So you want to try and get rid of that. Now, sometimes if you adjust the histogram, what you end up with is a ring around the planet. So what I tend to do is I'll go for my black and white point here, make it less aggressive. And I actually scrape the bottom of the planet here like that, and then set that to black. And there you go. So that's removed, the background. It's probably too black for most people's taste. I'm quite happy with it like this. Now, the next step that I'd normally do, I don't need to do it on this because the program that I was using to capture the image, I can remember the name of it. Just hold on a second. It's not allowing me to look at it.
Do you use Fire Capture or Sharp Cap or?
Sharp Cap. So yeah,
Yeah.
The program that I'm using to capture the image, you can actually adjust, and it's brilliant because poor quality optics have got bad chromatic aberration on it. And you can actually, with Sharp Cap, you can shift the red and blue planes on the image so that you can reduce the chromatic aberration. Obviously, when you start putting Barlow lenses on there, that increases it. And I did that with Sharp Cap, so you can see there's very little chromatic aberration on the planet here. But normally what I would do is take it there and align RGB. And if we just take a look at it, select an area, align, and it's telling me that it's okay. It doesn't need to move it any. So what this does here is that'll shift the red plane and that'll shift the blue plane. So what you'll see on some planets or some images is you'll see like a blue fringe up here and a red fringe at the bottom. And what that does is it moves the blue frames down and the red frames up, or so it aligns it. On this image, I've got it pretty good because I use Sharp Cap. All right, so the next thing I do take a look at is my white balance. So sometimes your images will either look too green, or if you remember your old NTSC pictures on TV, you had to adjust what they call it, the gamma back in the day. I think it was the red and the green. I think it was NTSC stood for never twice same color. All right, so I've just got this to automatically adjust the color balance on here. So if I cancel that, you can see it's got a bit of a yellow tinge to it. And the color looks a bit more natural now. And you can adjust it manually as well.
Yeah, and it just I'll make a comment as well. Along the way, different people have, different things they like in the way their images look. So there's not one correct way to do it. So like if you like it a little different or a little yellowy or whatever, you can make it a little yellowy, a little browny, Sorry, go ahead.
If I take a look here, though, I am seeing a bit of saturation. So what I might do is just kind of reduce this a little bit. Oops, that's a bit too much. Yeah, that kind of out there. So I'm not getting as much saturation here as I was. It's still a little bit there. So I'll take that. Okay, so the next thing that I do is to take a look at local contrast. So if we click on this, just see if it's one of these. not actually making much of a difference on this. Normally what it does, it kind of improves the contrast between the light and the dark areas. So it accentuates the cloud bands on here. For some reason, I'm not getting it to work automatically. Not wanting to play. All right, so next thing I do is to move on to wavelets. So if I again highlight the plan, you can see an immediate improvement there, right? So what I'll do is I'll cancel that. I'll show you how the workflow, so reset it. Okay, so the first thing you do, this works, it's quite intuitive. So you count the way around, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the way you'd move with it. And then there are 2 noise filters, and this is always the preferred one. You kind of use this as a last resort. So what we'll do, this steps it by 1, and this steps it by 3. So if you're looking for quick and dirty processing, what we can do is we'll take this up to 3, and you can see the noise starts to increase here. In fact, as I increase it, you can see it getting much noisier, right? So what we'll do next is we'll start, that's the size of the pixels that it's playing with. And this one here is the strength. So what we'll do is we'll start reducing the strength. And you'll see the noise starts reducing. Yeah. So I'm kind of going to go with, as I say, we're doing this quick and dirty anyway. So what we'll do now is we'll adjust the noise pre-filter and we'll reduce the noise. And there you go.
Yeah, look at how much that's improved.
What I'll do is I'll just sneak this down a bit so there's just a little bit of noise on there. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll play with this. Now, what we can do, by the way, is you can actually see, if we just click here, for instance, the noise reduction, you can see the difference that has made. So you can use that to sort of go back and take a look at the effects of each one of these processes or sub-processes. So that's what it looked like originally, and that's the improvement that's made. But you can also see there is actually a lot of sort of large, I'd say larger artifacts on here in terms of its noise. And I'd normally remove that using another program a little bit later. So what we'll do here is we'll just bang this up to 3, and we'll take this up to, say, 1.8. And then if you can see a subtle change here, and small changes are really good when you're doing planetary imaging. You don't want to do too much in one go. So I don't know whether you can see the improvement there.
Yeah. See
Okay.
it.
And then what we'll do is this is a high frequency and this is low frequency wavelet. So if I now start increasing this, you'll see bigger features being affected. So if I just take it right the way up here, like that, you can see it's the larger features rather than the smaller features that have been impacted on this. So that's the size and that's the strength. So what we do is we'll just reduce the size here. Okay, and as you can see, as we play with this, it's starting to get a lot more noise, and you can start to see some fringing on the edge there. I've got a bit of a technique to remove that a bit later. Okay, so what we'll do, it's a bit noisy, but let's see the difference that's made. It's not a lot of difference, so I'll just increase it a little bit. Okay. I'm not sure that's a whole lot better myself. I'm going to leave it at that. And then what we'll do is we'll pump the noise reduction up a little bit. So you can see now that as it actually is making a difference. So that's on and that's off. So it looks a little bit sort of soft, the image. You can see it sharpens up a little bit there. So this is probably as good as I'm going to get using Astroservice, unless you've got any tips here, Ian.
That's still
Ian?
really, I'm sorry, that's still a really nice image.
All right, so what I'm going to do now is you tell it to, at the moment, it's only enhancing that area there. So we take a look at IO here and I'll tell it to do all. You'll see that improves. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to take this image now. I'm going to save it. You just save it to my desktop. Nice. Temp. Let me create a temp folder. Exit astrosurface. All right. So next step that I'd normally take is to open up. A lot of people use, in fact, before I go there, I'm going to use Affinity, which is a great program.
I was about to say when I was going to recommend Affinity because it's a very low cost program compared to Photoshop.
Yeah,
There's actually, you can actually buy, there's actually some books out specifically using it for astrophotography. So you can get it at Amazon.
I didn't know that. I'll have to get it.
Yeah.
All right. So I use different programs for different things. I find some programs are better at some things than others. And what I do like on here is the white balance works really well. And I know I've done it already, but it's got a great picker. So if you look for a white object on the planet and do that.
That did a nice job. I did a nice job all throughout the image. Wow.
So I just take different white areas and see which one suits best, or you can go for a black area sometimes if you've got data, but I'm guessing that because of the way I clip the levels on this, there's probably no data in the black. So what I'm going to do is I'll just play with this. There, that looks all right.
I like that. I like the tone there.
Okay. A good thing about this as well, so if we go here and you've done a whole lot of processes, you can actually click each one of these and see the difference it's made individually. And you can scrap part of the process. So you can go back sort of in a non-destructive manner, do all the adjustments that you want to make. So here what I'll do is we'll take a look at the hue, saturation, and luminosity. I'm not going to adjust luminosity. We're already starting to get some saturation there. But if we shift the color saturation a little bit, if I move it right up, obviously that's going to look so artificial. And at the moment, I'm kind of, I'm leaning towards that. So if we take a look and see what difference that made, and go here, actually not much of a difference at all. Anyway, so there's not an awful lot that I'm good. This is great for deep sky, like the curves on here works really, really well. For planetary, I don't use it an awful lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, and the thing I don't like about this, you can't just save the image as a format, you have to export it. So, and what I normally do is I'll just put an abbreviation behind it, AFF for Affinity, so I can see what stage in the process I am. And then if I open up, I use Coral Photoshop as well a lot, as opposed to, sorry, Paint Shop Pro as opposed to Photoshop. So if
Yeah,
I go desktop,
Photoshop is kind of pricey now with a subscription fee. So
yeah, and Paint Shop Pro is really cheap. It's been around forever, and you can actually find free versions of it online. Where was I? Desktop, Jupyter temp. There we go, temp. So that's the image that we've just processed. If you want me to move it up here and get a bit of a move on, let me know.
well, you're all right.
All right, so first thing I'm going to do here is this image is quite small. So I'm going to increase the size of it. So I've got more data to play with. So I'm going to resize the image. Currently it's 1200 by 1000. I'm going to double the size of it. It's got like an AI powered in fact, it's got an AI process supposedly that it uses to enlarge the image without pixelating it. There's a few tools that you can get for this. And I'm going to show you another one just now, which is also really good. Okay, there we go. So that's increased the resolution of the image. But if you see this Topaz gigapixel, that does a great job of it, and actually does some processing while it's doing it as well.
Do you like the Topaz products? I had seen they were on sale recently.
Yeah, I use them a lot more for deep sky than I do for planetary.
Okay.
And I use like the denoise works pretty well, but there's this program here, and I'm going to come to it just now. Neat Image. You can download this free, but it'll only work on JPEG images. So if you're getting towards the end of your workflow, you're going to want a JPEG anyway if you're going to post it anywhere. And it does a fantastic job of noise reduction.
Huh.
I ended up buying the full version of it. So what I sometimes do is I'll go back to it a few times. As I see an image is getting noisy, I'll go and reduce the noise and then carry on working it with another software program. It's not cheap, but I like it. Anyway, so what I'm going to do here, I've increased the resolution of it, but this is a huge image. And if I sort of enlarge it to my screen size here, you can start seeing that the resolution is not fantastic on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the size of the image, or the size of Jupiter in comparison to the area. So what I'm going to do is just increase the canvas, and let's increase it to 3,600 by 2,700. Okay, let's give it a bit more. So canvas size, I'll take this up to, let's say, 4,800. There we go. So that as a proportion of the screen looks awfully good as opposed to what it looked like that. So it doesn't matter if it's a bit smaller, you can see an awful lot more detail. It's more pleasing to the eye. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use fade correction on my color. And I'm just going to show you the difference that it makes. What I'm going to do is reduce this because it's actually oversaturating it, so I might not use it here. Yeah, that's okay. So just to show you the difference that's made. Okay, and then I move down to brightness and contrast. Take a look at local tone mapping, which was what I was trying to do in Astrosurface. It wasn't working for some reason. But if I increase the block size a little bit.
Oh, wow, that does a nice job.
Yeah, so what it's doing is it's increasing the contrast between the different bands here. So what it's starting to do is bring out these small cloud bands there. Let me just show you again. All right. So if we go through now, sometimes this works pretty well. I don't know what it's going to do today, so I'm going to just give it a quick try. So what you can see here is at the moment, in fact, I'll increase the strength of it. At the moment, if I turn this off, you can see the outside of the image is quite dark. And what it does, it sort of spreads the light across the image. And you see it's improving again, the contrast. Yeah. So if you take a look at the edges over here, you can see more data on the edges there. So from there, what I'm going to do is take a look at noise reduction. This is great for deep sky. The one I use the most on here is edge preserving smooth. So what that does is it keeps the edges and it smooths the more uniform areas. All right. Now the improvement's normally marginal, but it's there.
Yeah, I can see a difference. Yeah, we've got a pretty good storm coming here. So if hopefully you should stay on if I get kicked off. But
Right. I'm almost done here anyway.
no, please carry on. I think you should stay on. I'm just letting you know that if all of a sudden I disappear, that's why.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply an unsharp mask here. And again, this can be really, really drastic and make the image look hugely noisy and also very artificial. And at this point, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make very, very small incremental adjustments. This image is already good as it is. So if we just, you can see very small improvement there, but you can see the noise is increasing and it's starting to look a bit almost like a cartoon. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move the radius down here. Okay, that's very, very marginal change there. It's almost imperceptible. Can you see it?
That's really hard to tell the difference. A little bit, yeah.
All right, so I'm done with this in this program. So I'm going to save it.
Yeah, and unsharp masking should be one of the last steps you do.
Yeah. So I'm done with this. So what I'm going to do quickly is take a look at neat image and see if we can just get rid of some of the noise on it. Okay, there's a ring around the planet there, which I can get rid of later if we need to. All right, so prepare the noise profile. What you do is you highlight an area on the image. So there, yeah, it's got clipping RGB, which is exactly what you'd expect the way I reduced the levels earlier on. And you're probably going to see some, there we go, not uniform Y. I actually don't know what that is, but I'm happy that I'm not seeing all of this. If I, let me see if I can get it here. There we go, Y, CR, CB. What you're trying to do is get it as close to not having too many issues, and that not uniform in Y. I'm normally okay with it. So you tell it to build a noise profile. Okay, and then what we do is you can make your adjustments and preview it, and you'll see how, there we go.
Wow.
See how that's removed all of that noise.
Does a nice job.
It's a really good tool. So what we'll do here is performance. I'll just set it on highest, and we'll reduce the noise reduction on it so that we can get more data back. So this is what it was like at 0. Yep. And as we slowly increase that, I'm going to take like 20%. We take it up to 30, maybe 35. Just a tad more. Take it to 45. And
And I just want to mention that trial and error is a big part of this kind of processing, right? So.
oh yeah, I'm happy with that. Maybe take it down to 50 from 55. Let's see if it just gives it a bit more data. All right, I'm happy with that. That's pretty much a complete image. What I'll do is I'm just going to remove that ring around it. So if I save the output image. Save as, it adds its own filter at the end there to let you know, like a suffix. Okay, I'm just going to quickly go back to show you how to remove fringing from the planets. Filter, there we go. And that, I'm really, really pleased with that image. Okay, so what we'll do is use the selection tool. We've set it over here to circle. So we're going to try and find the middle of the planet. So what we'll do is we'll enlarge that. Actually not done a bad job of getting it. I just need to move, I don't know, maybe a couple of more north of that. So okay, and what we'll do is we'll add IO, and then we'll invert the selection. Selections invert. So what we've done initially was we selected the planet because we don't really want to touch the planet. I've told it to look at the rest of the screen instead of the planet. And then what we can do now is adjust the histogram. We just got a 0, 6. We've actually already done it. Select none. There we go. We've removed the ring from around the planet. Well, mostly. Let me just undo that because I haven't caught it perfectly. I think you get the idea, right?
Yeah, I think the idea we get. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically what you're doing is you're highlighting the planet, and what you could do is come a bit on the inside here, and then select everything except the planet, and then you can reduce the banding on there. It's pretty much what you do. Save me laboring up.
And compared to how that image looked when you first looked at the video, it's amazing how good it really is.
Yeah. Right, that's it. Save that as a JPEG. And just for the heck of it, we'll post it on the group quickly.
I appreciate that.
If there's evidence.
As evidence of what we did. Yeah, you can take off your screen, Chris, if you don't.
There we go.
Yeah, so everybody, that's kind of a quick walk. That's actually an excellent walkthrough of AstroSurface and a little post-processing, courtesy of Chris. I kind of was going to talk a little bit about that tonight anyway, but obviously Chris did a much better job than I would have. So that's, it's pretty straightforward to actually get into the imaging. So, if you have a webcam, or you can get fairly inexpensive cameras to take video that hook up to your laptop via USB. And you can actually go out and try to take some of your own images. So I would encourage everybody to try that, because it's actually the processing's actually easier than so I would say easier. I'd say it's more straightforward, and it's a little easier to get really pleasing results than it is for deep sky. Deep sky involves a lot more steps in terms of the capture. You're worried about guiding, and then you're taking longer exposures and things like that. Whereas planetary imaging, you don't really worry about guiding because your exposures are extremely short. You just basically are mainly capture. You can see the video doesn't look. The raw video didn't look that good, but you want to be in focus and collimated. Really, that's about it. And then you can kind of just take over processing, and you can really capture with a few steps. You can see how AstroSurface actually labels them for you, like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. So it's kind of makes it a little easier to go through, and you can kind of experiment with each of the steps and see what produces the best result. So it's something I encourage everybody to try. So if everybody, again, because it's not something that costs a lot to get into. Again, you can use AstroSurface to do a lot of the processing. Something like Affinity. Affinity is not an expensive program. AstroSurface is free. You do have to buy Affinity, but it's fairly inexpensive. It's about $49. And then don't quote me on that. I haven't looked at it recently, but a lot of times they have sales where they'll have half price, where it's $25 or $29. So compared to programs like Photoshop, it's actually very affordable. Of course, if you have Photoshop, you can certainly use that as well. But if you don't want to, pay for all the Photoshop capabilities, Photoshop does a lot of things. Of course, it's a fine program, but Affinity can work well. And some of the other programs Chris referenced, you can get if you want. But even just using like just Affinity, or you can even use if you want to pay nothing. If you like open source programs, there's a program called GIMP, which is made by the GNU Foundation, and it's sort of like a kind of a Photoshop or Affinity, but an open source version. that you can also use to do some processing with. So, and again, that's free as well. So you can actually get into this without spending a lot of money, doing the planetary imaging and the lunar imaging. It's actually very satisfying because you can actually capture pretty good images most of the time. Generally, if you're in focus, if the seeing's not absolutely horrible, if you've got mediocre seeing and you can get it in focus, you can actually capture a good image. So the requirements are just a lot less. So one trick I use for focusing, we didn't really talk about focusing. We talked about it a little bit, I think, before we started the live stream. One trick I've always found when I focus for planetary imaging is that what I'll do is I'll turn the exposure up on the camera to where it overexposes the planet to just a big white blob. And then what I'll do is I'll play with the focusing on the telescope until the edge of that planet, because if it's a big white blob, it's going to be way overexposed, till the edge looks nice and sharp. And I find that a lot easier than leaving the exposure where you can see all the surface features and trying to focus on the surface features. For some reason, for me, it's a lot harder to look at the surface features and really pick out a good focus. So again, I'll just jack it way up the exposure temporarily while I focus and look for that really sharp edge between the light and the dark. That's just a little trick I use. And then I'll lower the exposure back down and take my imaging. So that's just my kind of little trick for that. Well, I know that was kind of long, but Chris did an excellent job. I think it was well worth it. So he did a great job. I want to thank him. Thanks, Chris, for walking us through that. Right, that'll be great because we do have a recording of it. So that'll be great for anybody that would like to follow along. That's actually a really good workflow that he showed. And again, I'll say it again. I really encourage everyone to try it because you can produce reasonable images relatively easy, right? Compared to deep sky photography, right? Again, if you get it in focus, it's all processing after the fact, right? So, that's the thing about planetary imaging. Not to belittle what people like Chris do. They do a great job bringing out all the little subtle details, but you'd be surprised if you just have it in focus, what you can bring out with even just minimal processing. So, well, again, Chris, thank you so much for walking us through that, the whole steps for all that. So I really appreciate that. Is there anything else anybody wanted to talk about or discuss tonight?
No.
No? Okay. Well, I hope to see everybody at our observing session. I'm gonna actually end the live stream. So for everybody watching.